Peace. Peace and love, family. It's your noble, A. Wright Bay from the Burning Bush Tabernacle Science Temple and School. And we like to send love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Listen, it's been a while since we journeyed through the knowledge of self, but we had something just drop on yesterday that the spirit led me to just jump on and, share because there needs to be some clarity around what Prophet Noble Jew Ali did and the impact of it in a plain way. Islam, I'm not here to editorialize the message. I just want the message to lay out there as it is. Amen. So on June 30th, 2006, the Supreme Court handed out a landmark decision to uphold birthrights, citizenship here in the United States of America, according to the 14th Amendment as part of the Constitution. Islam. So what I'm doing here is to clarify why should we care and what was around this this landmark decision, and why, again, should we be mindful, right? So we need to start asking ourselves, how does it affect me? Wasn't this a decision for immigrants that were to be here to give birth to children, so those children would automatically have citizenship, right? But I'm here, I'm not an immigrant. Why should I even be concerned with it? So the uproar wasn't based on immigrants. The precedent was that if birthrights were no longer granted in the 14th Amendment, right, the bigger fallout was about America's former slaves and their descendants. How would they be classified? So this is where we begin our brief discourse. And again, I'm going to read verbatim, by the grace of Allah, as I prepared and gathered some materials to just walk us step by step. Islam. So without further ado, we're going to bring it on stage. Boom. Let's get us some little lo-fi playing in the background. Come on. We're going to jump right into this because I won't be before you long, but I will read this verbatim in light of the landmark decision made by the Supreme Court Justice to uphold the 14th Amendment and not to remove birthright citizenship from those born here in the United States. Let's go. This was formed as a question and answer piece so that it clarifies some of the questions that may haven't yet been asked. And we begin. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is our protector, our guide, and our salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Aya Asha Aya. Shalom Alakim. Al-Rahman Al-Rahim. Al-Haq Yamu Hamim. Holy Aisha. Peace, 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 peace. To all the God men and women out there and the divine light seekers. Islam. When Noble Drew Ali taught on nationality and birthrights, how does it relate to citizenship of the people? And while we're reading this, this is grounded, right, in the Moorish framing of nationality and birthrights. We are going to separate it out in the spiritual principle, the civic principle, and the practical citizenship meaning, so it stays clear and balanced as we begin. How Noble Drew Ali's teaching on nationality and birthrights relate to citizenship. Noble Drew Ali's teaching was essentially saying a people cannot fully function as citizens until they know who they are as a people. In his framework, nationality was not just a label, it was the recovery of identity, dignity, lawful standing, ancestry, duty, and moral responsibility. The Morris text frames this directly. Come, all ye Asiatics of America, and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights. Why? Because you are not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. Come on. Number one, nationality gives the people a name beyond imposed labels. In Drew Ali's teaching, terms like Negro, Black, or colored were viewed as imposed descriptions, not true national names. The point was not merely racial pride, it was civil restoration. I repeat, civil restoration. A color does not describe a nation, a people, a constitution, a lineage, or a diplomatic identity. So when Noble Drew Ali taught Moorish American, he was giving the people a national consciousness. Again, so when he taught Moorish American, he was giving the people a national consciousness, a way to stand what? As members of a historical people, not as a scattered social category. That is why, watch this, in literature, when it states that the aim of the Moorish Science Temple of America was to promulgate the Mohammedan religion and give to all Moorish Americans their national free name. Point number two, birthright connects identity to inheritance and duty. So this entails birthrights means more than land or legal rights. In the Moorish teaching, it includes ancestry, divine creed, moral law, family law, national memory, and responsibility to uplift fallen humanity. So the Moorish Holy Quran passage puts it like this: what your ancient forefathers were, you are today without doubt or contradiction. When and then watch this, connects this to the need for the nation to worship under its own vine and fig tree. I'm going to read that sentence again. In the most holy Quran passage where it reads, "What your ancient forefathers were, you are today, without doubt or contradiction," and then connects this to the need for the nation to worship under its own vine and fig tree. So, birthright is the spiritual and ancestral inheritance that tells a people you come from somewhere, you belong to something, and you are accountable to live by a higher law. Point number three, citizenship. This is key. Citizenship becomes sacred responsibility, not just paperwork. This is where it relates directly to citizenship. Drew Ali's teaching did not merely say claim nationality, it also said become better citizens. Become better citizens. The movement was reported as playing a useful and definite part in advancing the sacred obligations of American citizenship. Hmm. That phrase is key. Sacred obligations of American citizenship, meaning nationality was not meant to make people lawless, detached, or rebellious against civic order. It was meant to make them more disciplined, more honorable, more organized, more economically productive, and more conscious of their public duty. Point number four, nationality restores self respect. Citizenship expresses it publicly. So, in plain language, this is what I'm saying. We're going to break it down as far as the principle and then the meaning, right? So, the principle of nationality, basic meaning, who you are as a people, right? Principle of birthright, basic meaning, what you inherit through ancestry, creed, and divine law. Principle, citizenship, its basic meaning, how you conduct yourself lawfully in society. Last one, principle, civic duty, basic meaning, how you uplift family, community, and nation. So the teaching is profound because it joins identity with conduct. So a person does not only declare nationality with the mouth, they prove it through their lawful behavior, good deeds, discipline, family order, community building, and public responsibility. The text also says the Moorish Science Temple was organized around love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and that its laws were to guide meetings and conduct by those principles. Watch this. The deeper interpretation. Metaphysically, Noble Drew Ali was teaching that a people without self knowledge live under another people's imagination. Once they recover name, creed, ancestry, and law, they recover their inner throne. Citizenship, then, is the outer garment of an inner awakening. I'll repeat. Citizenship, then, is the outer garment of an inner awakening. A people must first know who I am, whose I am, what law governs me, what duty do I owe to my people and humanity. Then citizenship becomes more than legal status. It becomes upright living and public form. Balanced note. This teaching should not be confused with rejecting lawful civic responsibility. The strongest reading is that Noble Drew Ali was calling the people to national self knowledge and better citizenship, not disorder. The message was reclaim your name, honor your forefathers, learn your divine creed, and become a lawful, upright, productive people under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. He mentioned that the people were part and parcel of this said government. And how does that relate to the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment? Yes, the phrase part and parcel of this said government is a powerful civic statement. In plain terms, it means the people are not outside the government. They are one of the living sources of it. The government is not supposed to be some foreign power hovering over the people. It is constituted by the people, for the people, and through the people's lawful status, participation, and responsibility. Now, we're moving on into the Moorish reading. From the Moorish Science Temple of America's angle, watch this. Noble Drew Ali's teaching on nationality was saying, you cannot properly participate in government if you have been misnamed, denationalized, or reduced to a racial color label, right? That's why in the literature, right, it emphasized that Black is not a nationality and argues that nationality is tied to nationhood, treaty standing, rights, and recognition among nations. It also frames the problem as a loss of nationality and birthrights, saying the people were stripped of their true identity and therefore lost connection to their inheritance. So when Noble Drew Ali says the people are part and parcel of this said government, the teaching is not merely we live here. It is saying we are original participants, contributors, citizens, builders, and lawful members of the body politic, not wards, not strangers, or merely tolerated dependents. So, Noble, how does this all start to boil down into the amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th? Glad you asked. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are commonly called the Reconstruction Amendments. Historically and constitutionally, they abolished slavery, established birthright, citizenship, and equal protection, and protected voting rights regardless of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The National Archives states that the 13th Amendment abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime, and that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments greatly expanded the civil rights of Americans. The 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868 and extended civil and legal rights to formerly enslaved people, including due process and equal protection under the law. So the 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870, right? It's coming after, and prohibited denial of voting rights on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So, right, so you have the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, right, is set for punishment of crime, right? Then you had the 14th Amendment, which basically said it was a ratification of the 1868, which extended the civil and legal rights So abolishment of slavery, right? It's set for a crime. And then the 14th, now you got more legal rights. Watch this: civil and legal rights to formerly enslaved people, including due process and equal protection. So you had to abolish slavery, then you got due process, right, and equal protection under the law, right? So now the 15th was ratified in 1870 and prohibited denial of voting rights on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, right? So these are landmark decisions constitutionally: abolishment of slavery, uh, equal protection under the law, right, and voting rights, right? But Noble Jew Ali's deeper concern was this: were the people merely being granted civil status after bondage, or were they reclaiming a prior nationality and birthright? Right? So it's like, well, you go into slavery, what were you prior to that? And now that you're coming up out of that condition, do you not reclaim what you were prior? Or is the civil rights, meaning the 13th, the amendment, I mean, the abolishment of slavery, the 13th Amendment, right? And the 14th with the civil rights and the equal protection under the law, including with the voting rights, is this a replacement for your birthright in nationality? Watch this. That's where the tension comes in at. Just so we want to make this plain. And I had to editorialize that a little bit just to frame it in your mind, right? Now, as we move on, and we're almost done, when we look at this table, it's breaking down the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, right? So on one column, you have the amendments, right? And then the second or center column, you have public constitutional meaning, right? And then the critical Moorish meaning at the last column, right? So this is what we're going to do. 13th Amendment. Now, this is the public constitutional meaning, right? 13th Amendment, as we just spoke, ends slavery, right? And any involuntary servitude, except in the punishment of a crime, right? The critical Moorish meaning to this 13th Amendment is, watch this: the 13th Amendment removes the slave condition, right? But does not by itself restore national name, ancestry, or birthright. Full stop. Moving on. 14th Amendment. This is the public constitutional meaning. 14th Amendment defines U.S. citizenship and equal protection. Now, so prior to this 14th Amendment, right, it could be argued what defined U.S. citizenship. So after the 14th Amendment, right, it defined U.S. citizenship and equal protection under the law. What's the Moorish critical meaning behind this, right? The 14th Amendment gives civil citizenship, but Noble Drew Ali's teaches he presses beyond civil status, watch this, into national identity. So the 15th Amendment, the public constitutional meaning, it protects voting rights regardless of race, color, previous servitude, right? So the Moorish critical meaning here is the 15th Amendment gives political participation, but the Moorish critique asks whether one can vote fully as a people without knowing one's nationality. So the key distinction, right? Civil rights versus birthrights. This is the heart of it. Civil rights are rights recognized and enforced within what? A civil government. Birthrights in the Moorish teachings are deeper. How so? For they concern divine origin, nationality, ancestry, inheritance, name, land consciousness, and lawful standing among the family of nations. As literature makes this distinction, right, sharply when it argues that people were relying on civil privileges, watch this, instead of divine birthrights, and asks, how can one have civil rights but not human rights? It also argues that lack of citizenship and nationality produces a weakened civil condition or civic condition, right? So now, how will we read this, right? Carefully and not recklessly. This is a plain, unemotional reading. We treat it academically. Under present U.S. law, the 14th Amendment does establish U.S. citizenship for persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction. But in Noble Drew Ali's spiritual national framework, he is pushing the people to understand that citizenship without self knowledge can still leave a people dependent, confused, and politically immature. So let's close this out. So, what was he really teaching? That is one of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. He was teaching that the people should not see themselves as merely former slaves, racial minorities, dependents of civil rights legislation, or people waiting to be accepted. He was calling for us to see ourselves as a nation, conscious people with a divine creed, lawful name, civic responsibility, and duty to uplift humanity. That is why the Moorish Holy Quran says that the Moorish Science Temple is lawfully chartered and incorporated organization, and that it works for the redemption, right? Watch this, under of the people, under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It also calls the people to hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, so they may learn to love instead of hate. So right here, we can clean it up, right? So this is the clean synthesis right here. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments gave a constitutional remedy to slavery, to citizenship exclusion, and voting exclusion, right? So what Noble Drew Ali's teaching aimed at was a deeper remedy, though, to restore the name, to restore the nationality, to restore the birthright, to restore the moral law, then become better citizens. So the part and parcel of this said government means the people are not political outsiders. But Noble Drew Ali would say they must know themselves correctly to function as true members of the body politic, not as a color class, not as a slave descendant legal category only, but as a people with nationality, divine origin, and civic duty. Peace and love, family.